December 10th, 1982. This is Joe Todd, interview with Hazel Beaver. Mrs. Beaver, when were you born?
In Carlton, Illinois.
I'm sorry?
Carlton, Illinois. It's
And,
right 60 miles north of St. Louis.
yeah. And when's your birthday?
January the 10th, 1893. I think that makes it 90. And
You'll be 90 years old next January.
Doesn't that add up that way?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll be 90 years old next January. Yeah. I'm in good health.
Yeah. Good. Who was your father?
Richard Lovett.
And where was he from?
Well, I believe he was born in Indiana. I know he was born in Indiana. And, excuse me. I think he was born in Pennsylvania. I think his people came over to England from France. From England and from, I'm a little bit mixed up. But anyway, I think he was born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. What did he do for a living?
My father?
Yeah.
Well, he was a builder of houses for a long time, and then he went into the furniture business when he came to Hobart.
Mm-hmm. And who was your mother?
My mother's name was Turney, Sophie Turney.
And where was she from?
Well, she was from Carlton, and I think she was born there.
Okay. How long did you live in Carlton?
Well, my father came to the opening of the Kiowa County opening, and I was 8 years old at that time, and we came down to Hobart at that time.
Do you have any memories of Carlton?
Oh, yes, I loved it.
What kind of town was it like?
Well, it was a real good small town. It was a small town, but it was really a nice citizenship.
What was the main industry in Carlton?
No, it was just, you see, in those years, there were not many big industries. It was mostly agriculture.
Oh, so it was a farming town mainly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What was the population of Carlton when you left?
Well, I think I would say it was about, I have no idea, only I'm just guessing at what it might have been about that time, been 2,500.
Yeah.
It was a small village.
You went to school there?
What?
Did you go to school there?
Well, just 1 or 2 years. I was 8 years old, and so I didn't get to go to school very much. I went to school mostly in Hobart and was graduated from the high school at Hobart.
What was the name of the school in Carlton? Do you remember?
No, at that time they only had one school called the Carlton.
Okay. When you came to the Kiowa opening, your father was it a land run or was it a lottery?
They made a run. No, it wasn't like no, they came down on their own accord, but they came at the time of the opening.
So it was a land run then?
Yeah, yes.
Can you tell me about it?
I'm a little bit vague on that because I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Can you tell me what the run was like or what you remember about it?
Well, as far as I can remember is that the people just started to come in there. It wasn't like the 89ers. You're thinking of the 89ers,
Yeah,
I guess.
Right.
But this wasn't like that. It was later. It was in 1900. And the people started coming in there, make their homes. They could draw claims for farms.
Oh, so they drew claims then?
They had farms. They could make a claim.
And your father drew a claim? Your father drew a claim?
No, my father didn't, but he went into business. He went into the furniture business when he came to Hobart.
So you all moved to Hobart then?
Uh-huh.
And did he have a furniture store there?
Yes.
What was the name of it?
Lovett Furniture Stores, I remember.
Now, did he make furniture or did he...
No, he didn't make it. He just was a regular store. He had a regular furniture store.
So it was kind of like a mail order thing or...
Oh, no. It was just one of the stores around the square.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What was Hobart like when you moved there?
Well, I remember that my father and his brother went down ahead of us and built houses, frame houses, just within a block of each other, so they'd have room for their families. I remember that. And let me see. Then he brought the family down there when they got the houses ready, so we could all start housekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of. I was just a small child and never gone around any. And people didn't travel in those days, you know. That was in 1900.
What was the main industry of Hobart? What was the main industry in Hobart, the main business?
Well, I don't know. It was an agricultural area. I don't know if there was any main. We had, just like all the small towns, a square and stores all around it, and a big farming area. It was a prairie town. And, of course, it was very pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good little town. It was good citizenship.
Any
I can
Indians
remember
around
that.
there? Any Indians around there?
Oh, yes, yes. I remember the Indians well.
What tribal group were they?
Kiowa.
Kiowa?
Mm-hmm.
Any...
And then the Comanches, but the Kiowa around Hobart.
Yeah.
And they wore their native dress, you know, the shawls.
Who are some of the... Can you tell me about the Kiowa? What do they look like? Or how do they act?
What the Indians look like?
Yeah.
Well, they were kind of red-skinned. It wasn't dark black like the colored race, but they were kind of a reddish tan, I'd say. And they dressed for their shawls, and they loved beads, and the regular Indian dress that you've probably seen in the shows.
Mm-hmm. How did they live?
Where did they live?
Yeah, where did they live in?
Well, now, I don't know too much about how they lived. I think that I may think about it, but I know they didn't live in town, so they probably lived around in the countryside there.
Mm-hmm.
With tents, maybe. But I don't remember much about that because we didn't have cars in those days and people didn't get around. We just...
And did they come in town quite often?
Yes, my father had this store, and they would come to town on a Saturday or circus day or anything. My father would put out chairs in front of his store, and the Indians would come in and sit down in them, you know, and watch the crowd and the Indians. I mean, the people.
Did you get to know any of them very well?
No, I didn't. No.
Mm-hmm.
I think my father probably did, but I didn't, and I wasn't. I was so young, I wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm. Were you in Hobart on Statehood Day?
What is it?
Were you in Hobart on Statehood Day?
What day?
Statehood, when we became a state in 1907.
1907. Yes, I was there at that time, but I don't quite remember. I remember statehood. When we went into statehood too, but I don't remember.
That was November 16th, 1907.
Uh-huh.
When we joined the Union.
Yes.
Were there any big celebrations or anything at Hobart that you remember? Or?
I really don't remember. I kind of remember vaguely, but I wouldn't want to be sure of it.
Okay. There was a depression in 1907 or 1908.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
And when?
1907, 1908, 1909.
1907. Well, I heard my father talk about the hard times. They called it hard times.
Yeah.
They didn't. I never heard the word depression until this last one of that big one we had.
Yeah. What were the hard times like that your father talked about?
Well, I remember one thing my father told my mother. He said, "Now I don't want you charging anything because things are pretty hard, and we can wait a while before we go out after things that we needed, you know, or thought we needed, like clothes and things."
During the hard times, what were your average meals like?
Meals?
Yeah.
Well, we never suffered for anything that I can remember.
So you always had plenty
My
of
father
meat?
always was a good provider, as I recall, but we did go through those bad times.
What kind of house did you live in Hobart?
What kind of house?
House?
Town.
No, well, what kind of house did you live in Hobart?
Well, as I said, when my father and his brother came down and built these two frame houses, and they were 5 and 6 rooms, each of them. And they were on one of the prominent corners there, on the north boundary. If you know where the fairgrounds is, if you've been out there, well, it was on one of the main corners, and we lived in this frame house until Father added a little more to it as he felt like he could. Mm-hmm. You see, a lot of that's all pretty vague to me now, but I do remember mostly the actual facts.
Did you have running water in the house?
Any water?
Did you have running water in the house?
No, we had a cistern.
Had a cistern.
But it was good water.
And you had a privy outside then?
Yes. We didn't have any accommodations like that at all until later years. And not only us, but they were in the town. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any water system or anything like that.
When did the city get a water system? What year? Do you remember?
I don't quite remember. I just don't. I'm not one of the oldest citizens left, I guess, when I'm in there.
Who was the mayor of Hobart at that time?
Mayor? I don't remember that.
You know who ran the bank?
Ran the bank?
Yeah.
Mention the name, and if you know.
Well, I don't know who the
banker was. You
don't
know?
No. Who was the most prominent person that you knew in Hobart at that time?
Well, one of the prominent men I know was Wolfinger.
Wolfinger?
D.S. Wolfinger, and he had a bank there, and they lived next door to us. And he was a prominent man. Mm-hmm. And but now, who was mayor? I can't think who it might have been. See, I was just a child, and a lot of those things didn't impress me very much.
When did you meet your husband?
Meet my husband? Well, I've been married twice, and my first husband was in the bank there at Hobart, in Roy Hart, and during the war we were separated. And then later I married Mr. Beaver, Dale Beaver, at Fairfax.
Mm-hmm. What did you do during the war, World War I?
Well, I didn't mean that he was in the service.
Oh, okay.
We just happened to...
You were separated during that time?
During that time.
Did you do any work for the war effort?
Did I?
Yes.
No.
Now, some of the women knitted sweaters and some worked for the Red Cross.
Let's see. What year was that now?
It was 1917, 1918.
1918. Well, I know my first child was born about 1919, mm-hmm. and I was home most of the time.
Did you go to, what year did you graduate from high school in Hobart?
I believe it was 1912.
1912.
I believe it was.
Did you go to college?
Yes, I went to college, but it wasn't until after my husband and I separated later years.
Yeah. Where'd you go?
I went to, well, of course I was graduated from the Hobart High School, and then through those years I was married, and then after that I broke up, I went to Edmond to school and got a teacher's certificate for 1 year. I could teach on that one certificate. And then later I went back and got my degree. Mm-hmm. And
what year did you go to Edmond?
Well, I believe it was around 1922 or 3, somewhere along.
How big was
Edmond?
The school at that time.
Well, it wasn't too big, but it was an awful good school. They still have one of the main buildings there that they have.
Who was your main professor at that time when you went to
My main profession?
Yeah, the professor.
Professor? Oh, let me see. Nyhart was one of the older ones, Dr. Nyhart. And there was another one, the psychologist, that I can't recall his name right now, but he was one of the main professors. And Hampton, have you heard of her? Mm-hmm. She was one of the main
What did
teachers.
she teach?
Well, she taught in the college.
She did.
And she came from Sentinel, around Sentinel.
Did she teach a certain subject or?
I think she taught history.
History. What did Nyhart teach?
I imagine she's dead, though, now.
Yeah. What did Nyhart teach?
Nyhart? For primary teachers.
Where did you teach after you got your degree?
After I got my degree, I guess I taught here in Oklahoma City.
Okay, now you taught at Godibo, didn't you?
No, I only lived in Godibo about a year.
Okay, you
and
didn't teach
I
there.
taught a year there, but my parents lived there and had a store there too. One in Hobart at one time and in Godibo at one time, and I went and taught school there 1 year.
Did you have a certificate to teach there at the time?
Yes, yes.
When did you go to Godibo? What year?
Well, I think it must have been around 1901. See, the war, it was during those war years, or close of them.
Okay, now the war ended in 1918.
1918.
Yeah.
Well, this was later than that, several years.
Okay. How big was Godibo? What was Godibo like?
Well, it was just a good, small town. It was really a good town, as little towns can be. It was just a village almost, but it was a good town, and they had pretty much of an educated citizenship there. Pretty good stores.
Yeah. It was mainly a farming community?
Yes, it was a good farming community.
Like wheat
it was
farms?
a prairie country.
Yeah. Mainly wheat farms around there, or ranchers?
Well, I don't know so many ranches, but I think maybe they did grow a lot of wheat around there. Cotton. Cotton was one of their main industries. I think of that now.
You know who ran the cotton gin in Godibo?
Yes.
Who ran that?
Oh, let me see. I used to know those names, but I can't recall them right now.
Mm-hmm. But there was a cotton gin in Godibo.
In Godibo?
Yeah.
Was there one?
Was there a cotton gin in Godibo?
I don't remember that there was, but I believe there might have been. Nearly all those towns, it was a prairie town. They didn't have cars in the early days, and people had to just haul their products, whatever it was.
Now, after Godibo, did you move to Fairfax?
Well, I went to Fairfax after I finished I got my life certificate in Edmond. I went to Fairfax to teach. And I taught there, let me see. Well, I married Mr. Beaver after I went up there, and that was the first year I was married
you
to
met
him.
him in Fairfax?
To him. He's my second husband.
Mm-hmm. And you met him in Fairfax?
I met him. He was a druggist.
What year did you marry Mr. Beaver?
Oh, let me see. We were married at that time. It was long in those years, let me see, 24, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe it was 1924.
What did you teach?
Well, I taught elementary grades mostly, but I did go there and I taught junior high. And then I went into elementary and I taught 6th grade.
How big was Fairfax when you were teaching?
Fairfax?
Yeah.
Well, Fairfax is a pretty good-sized town. A lot of money there. That's an Osage country.
Yeah.
A lot of money around
Did you
there.
get to know the Osages pretty good?
Oh, I had 1 or 2 in my class. And I had elementary work, 6th grade. And I liked the Indians very much.
What were the Osages like?
The Osages, well, they were worth all kinds of money, and they'd buy cars that were like lavender and bright-colored cars, And what was the other part of the question? What were the Indians like?
What were they like?
They're quiet race. They're not very talkative. They're rather quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But as a class, if I had them in a class, they were very nice.
Yeah.
I like the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an Indian. I came from Illinois, and we didn't have it.
And when did you move to Oklahoma City?
When did I move to Oklahoma City?
Did your husband move here?
Yes, he died here in 1966. Mr. Beaver did.
Okay, where'd your husband... Oh, he was a pharmacist, wasn't he?
Yes. Yes.
And so, what year did you move here, you and your husband?
Let me see. When did we move here from Fairfax, I guess? Well, I started teaching school here about the time of the war, and then I taught until I was retired. And so, going back from there, well, I don't know whether I can answer your question or not. What was it?
Yes, so what year did you move to Oklahoma City?
Oh, what year did I come to Oklahoma City? Well, I just don't quite remember.
No.
Yeah. How long did you teach in Oklahoma City?
Well, I started in about the time of the war. World War.
World War II?
II, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was retired in 1958. I taught the same grade, 6th grade. I taught that all the time and in the same room all that time.
Yeah.
I would taught the same grade in the same room and all.
Any of your students?
Huh?
Who have some of your outstanding students been?
Was I?
No, who were some of your outstanding students?
Well, there was one boy I know is an outstanding boy, but he's been gone, I think, a long time. Horace Thelfeld. And he lived up at Tonkawa, the last I knew of him. I think he taught in the school at Tonkawa.
Yeah.
Have you heard of him?
The name's not familiar.
Hmm.
The name's not familiar.
Well, I wondered if you'd seen him or anything. I was just trying to find out if he's still living.
I'm sure he is. When did you teach him? What year?
Huh?
What year was he in school?
Well, we were all graduated at Hobart in the same year, and I guess it was about 1912 or 11.
Oh, okay.
1912.
Yeah, okay. What about students you taught in Oklahoma City? Any of them go on to become famous or do anything?
I don't remember that they did. They've all been, a lot of them been good students.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Let me regress just a little. How did you and your family come to Oklahoma? Did you come by train?
Yes. And my folks, and my father and his brother, what would I say, charter a freight car and moved all our furniture down. I remember we had a piano that was shipped down and things like that at that time was not heard of very much, you know.
Anything spectacular happened on the trip? Anything outstanding on the train trip?
Well, I don't remember anything, only that it seems kind of vague in my mind that my aunt, who came down with us, she gave us some milk or something on the train, and it made us all throw up.
Okay. What is your fondest childhood memory?
How old would I be? What would you consider a child?
Oh,
10, 12.
Yeah. Or what's your fondest memory?
Oh. Well, my childhood was all very, very pleasant, and I had a good home.
Mm-hmm.
My father was always in business out there at Hobart, and we just had a good home, and I remember we had our little parties, and which was all very pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry we're...
Oh, that's fine.
I just had a happy, pleasant childhood, I'll put it that way.
Did you have 2 sons?
Yes. I have a son that was 22 years old, I believe it was, when he was deceased, when he became deceased, and he was with the 45th Division of Oklahoma.
He was?
And he got sick while he was in the division and died. He had pneumococcal meningitis. It was a horrible
death.
death.
World War II?
Uh-huh, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had another little boy, and he died of pneumonia, too, in about 1926.
Yeah. Do you have... did you do any work for the war effort during World War II?
War effort?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I had a small baby along through those years. That was... What year was that? 19...
Well, that was in the 40s, 41, 42.
41, no, I didn't have a baby then. 41, but I taught school. That was part of the...
Okay.
They needed teachers.
Yeah.
I know sometimes I'd have as many as 50 children in a room. They were just in transit, you know, and we had quite a problem.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Do you have any grandchildren?
No, the son that died at 22, that was the oldest, and he died.
Was he married?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, he was single.
Yeah. Well, do you have any comments you want to make about your childhood or your parents or your father making the run? Or homesteading?
Well, he didn't really homestead.
Okay. That's right. He opened up a business in Hobart.
Yes, he opened up a business, and he and his brother came down and built their houses before we brought the families down. And my childhood was very pleasant. My father always... We had hard times in those years, but nothing that would just... Not anything like the great big depression we had this last time.
Do you remember the dust storms, the Dust Bowl? The 30s?
Oh, yes.
What were they like, the dust storms?
Well, one of the worst storms I ever saw down out there was they had prairie fires quite a bit out there, you know, to burn off the gas to get ready for plowing, I guess. And they had this prairie fire out there on North Boundary at Hobart. And a wind came up that night, strong wind, and blew that fire all over the town. And I remember leaving our home, because we were right on the boundary there. And we left our home and went up to another part of town and went into a cave that belonged to somebody's home. And I remember that as a child. It was really a bad storm. And my father and some of the other neighbors and all would get up on top of the roofs with wet cloths or something that they had, the mops, and put out the sparks that would fly on the roofs, you know, to keep it from spreading. It was really an awful thing.
Mm-hmm. What year was that fire?
Well, I I would say it must have been, as near as I can remember, it would probably be around 19 and 18, I don't know.
Were there many houses in Hobart burned during that fire?
Not too many, because they all got out and worked to save the homes.
So they directed for a fire around Hobart?
The families worked. I mean, the men, they all had sufficient things to help put it out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that they sent us kids to a cave in town where we'd be safe.
Yeah.
And my sisters and brothers, we all went. And
mm-hmm.
You knew about the storm, a big fire, the big Snyder, when they had the big cyclone there. You found out about that?
Was that in Woodward or Hobart?
No, Hobart. They had one at Woodward Lake. You on?
Yeah. Okay, tell me about the cyclone in Snyder.
Well, it was awful. It came up at night, I think, and I remember that they came to Hobart. The Frisco Railroad station agent lived across the street from us, and I had a brother that was about grown, and he came over to get my older brother to go down to Snyder with him. They were getting a bunch of men to go down to help put it out. It was so bad.
Was it a fire?
Yes, it was a fire.
Oh, okay.
No, well, it was fire cyclone. It was cyclone, that's
okay.
what it was. And they went down on the Frisco train. This man was a Frisco agent there at Hobart.
Mm-hmm.
And he gathered up as many men as he could to take down there to help the people that were in distress, you know, like any catastrophe would be.
How bad did it destroy the town?
Oh, it did an awful lot of damage. I can't tell you because I don't know. But it just practically tore it up.
Anyone killed? Anyone killed in the fire?
Yes, I think so. I don't quite remember. That's gone pretty far back.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the dust storms. What were they like?
Well, like I said, they come up and the dust just blows. It's so bad you can hardly see across the street. It would be so bad. That night that we went down to this cave to live, it was awful bad. The dust storm was. I think I'm right on that. I know we went to this cave for protection, and I think it was that time, about the Snyder time. I don't remember. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. How long would the dust storms last?
Well, sometimes they'll last a day, maybe 2 or 3 days. They'll have a spell of dust storms. They're pretty bad. Mm-hmm. Your houses are just filled with dust.
Could you keep it out of the house?
No, you couldn't. One could hardly keep it from seeping in. We didn't have very many brick houses, and they were nearly all frame cottages. They were all built in the early days.
Would you try to keep it out?
Oh yes, my mother tried.
What would your mother do to keep it out?
Well, just clean house. She just have to.
Oh, you don't put anything over the windows or anything over the doors?
No, I don't remember that she did that.
Mm-hmm.
I may have made some mistakes. I don't know, but I've done the best I can.
Yeah. Well, do you have any comments you want to make About the Depression or the dust storms or teaching?
Well, of course, I taught school at Fairfax, and I taught here in Oklahoma City the longest. And I came here during the war years and taught until '58. That was quite a spell. And I enjoyed it very much. And I enjoyed teaching. No matter where I was, I enjoyed it. It was my career. But I've been retired. As you know, I'll be 90 in January.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to do with this?
This tape will go back to the Oklahoma Historical Society.
Oh, sure enough.
For the oral history program.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, if I had any knowledge, I could have probably been more help to you.
I think we have a good interview.
But I remember that my father and his brother came down here during the opening of the Kiowa County opening. And they each built a cottage for their families. And then they brought us down and brought our furniture down from Illinois. And they set up housekeeping right away.
Mm-hmm. Have any brothers and sisters?
I had 2 brothers, yes. And my uncle had 2 children. So we both had brought our families down.
How big was the house your father built?
It had about, we had 4 or 5 rooms, frame cottage. It was nice in those days because you remember a lot of people lived in tents. There were a lot of tents.
How many people lived in tents in Hobart?
Well, I wouldn't know for sure, but I would say there were probably 100 or more, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I remember one house that was built behind ours, that it was a well-built frame, and then it was covered with canvas, you know, and they set up housekeeping in that, and they had a nice home. It was comfortable.
Now, these tents today, was it kind of like a camp with a tent?
Yeah, it's kind of like a tent. They had a frame.
Because there was a wooden frame with a tent.
Wooden frame, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
A wooden frame.
With a canvas over it.
And with a canvas over it, and they were built well.
Yeah. Now, the people that lived in tents, without the wooden frames, were they in camps?
I think so. I think a lot of them were.
Did you ever go to those camps?
Huh?
You ever go to those camps? Did you know anyone that lived in them?
Well, I knew those people that lived back of us that had this nice tent.
What about the ones that just lived in tents by themselves?
I don't really know much about that.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Did most of them eventually have framed houses built? Or?
Oh, as fast as they could accumulate, why they would start building the town, you know.
What about the oil boom around there?
Well, they haven't had too much.
They haven't?
No, not around Hobart. I'll tell you where they had the oil boom, the oil countries at Fairfax. That's where I was teaching along about in those years.
Were you in Fairfax when they had the big oil boom there?
Yes.
What was the oil boom like in Fairfax?
Well, they just had an awful lot of money to spend, that's all.
A lot of oil people move in?
The Indians would drive in their expensive cars, and as I said, they liked bright cars, maybe colored cars like lavender and red and all those colors. And
a lot of oil field workers move in Fairfax?
Yes, a lot of them. They had a Big Hill Trading Center where they carried everything, groceries. And
Big Hill Trading Center?
Mm-hmm.
Where was it located?
On one of the main blocks. It wasn't built around a square. Fairfax wasn't, but they had one main street. And this Big Hill was practically one whole side of that. But they had all kinds of stores.
So it was just a big general store then?
Uh-huh. Furniture, groceries, and everything. And then they had this oil money. Nobody lacked for money in those days. That's when I went up there to teach. And that's when I married Mr. Beaver. That gives you a little insight as well.
You go to Pawhuska?
Yes, I had friends at Pawhuska, and I'd go there and visit once in a while.
What was Pawhuska like?
Well, it was a very good town, well built. Well, they had a lot of business there.
So that was the capital of the Osage Nation?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It was a good town.
Did you know Fred Lookout?
Who?
Fred Lookout?
No, that's an Indian name.
Yeah, he was chief of the Osage Nation.
Oh, no, I didn't know him. Now, there's a books or something like that was up there, too, that I think taught with the Indians, or taught them.
What was the name?
Well, I think it's Boric, B-O-A-R-K, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of that name. You might inquire about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your information.
Well, I hope I've been some help to you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this.
I don't want any notoriety out of it. Would I have any?
If you don't want any, no.
Well, I don't know what kind of notoriety I'd have. If you just give me a